Renee, we're going to count on you to fill them in. Kidding. Kidding. So the other thing I want to let you know, for any of you that haven't been here before, or just as a reminder, we are recording our Wednesday workshops. So while your name won't necessarily be read off or said, although we are going to do introductions, if you're not comfortable with that, let us know. We'll figure something out. All right. So, everybody here for cover letters?
Yes.
All right, great. Go. We will jump in then. So just want to give you a little overview of the topics that we're going to cover. We'll do our introductions. We'll talk about some preparation for the cover letter. We're going to do, I edited a few moments ago and clearly I didn't do it well, so just ignore that. We're going to introduce you to the cover letter formula. We're going to do a critique as a group. And then you're going to write the middle paragraph of your cover letter. And if we have time, you will critique each other's middle paragraphs. And then we'll give you an update on our profit hours. So, Allison.
Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Allison Viverette. If I haven't met you before, I know I've seen many of your faces in previous Wednesday workshops. I'm the graduate assistant with GSE Career and Professional Development, and I'm also a first year's master's student here getting my degree in higher education.
And I'm Amy Benedict, Director of GSE Career and Professional Development and a proud alumna of our Executive Doctorate Program in Higher Education Management. And then I added our new career peer advisors, one of them who we are lucky to have with us today, and one of them is actually missing from that photo, but that's a group that you may be interacting with in the future. And now if we can just get a little feel for your name, if you want to give a fake name, that's okay, but what program you're in, and on a scale from 0 to 10, with 0 being, I think my cover letter is the worst one in the world, to 10 being, I think, let's reframe that, the best one at GSE, to 10 being, oh, I think my cover letter is the best one at GSE. How would you rate where your cover letter stands at the moment? So, who would like to start? You're smiling, so I'm going to go with you.
Okay, all right. So, my name is Latrice. I am in a Master's in Ed Policy program. I'd say, I don't know, maybe a 7-ish, somewhere like that. I just don't like cover letters. So.
That's the very appropriate confession as well. All right, so then why don't we'll go this way and come back. How about you?
Okay, so I'm Ariana, and I'm in TESOL program in GSE. For my cover letter, probably 1.
Okay.
Hi, so my name is Simone. I'm also in TESOL program in GSE. For my cover letter, I will also rate 1 because I really don't know how to write it.
Okay, great. How about you?
My name is Yui. I'm in LST program. I'll give a 5 score to my cover letter because I don't really know what's the best version of the cover letter.
So you've got something you feel okay about.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, hi, my name is Renee, and I'm in the professional counseling program, and I'm one of the career peer advisors here. I would say I will rate mine as 8 or 9.
Good. I was hoping it might be somewhere
Because I have some
there.
experience, yeah.
So, as a side note, she did a practicum in the career office at St. Joseph's. She's been through resume training, and lots of the principles apply. So she's a little bit of an outlier on our research.
Hi, my name is Agirim, and I'm in TLL program. I think my cover letter is also 5.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so not bad, but maybe not comfortable to send it out yet. Okay, great.
Hi everyone, my name is Penn, and I'm in the LST program as well. And I will rate my cover letter maybe 5 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have written a lot of them, but I never know what is wrong or what is right.
Okay, great.
My name is Marcella. I'm in the UTR program at GSE.
Oh, great. Welcome.
And I would rate myself as a 4. I have something, but I don't want to.
to myself, how did you get here today? No school, right?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Great, glad to hear it. All right, so 1 to 9 with kind of a cluster at 5-ish. Okay, that's great. That just helps us have a feel for where you guys are at with things. All right. So, how many of you were at the Career Readiness Conference for International Students on Friday? Okay, just one. Great. So, so then you're the only one. It'll be a little bit of a repeat for. So last Friday, we offered a program for international students that was from 9 to 4, kind of everything you need to know to get started with a job search. And there was a speaker from the Writing Center. And one of the things that was interesting is he was approaching cover letters from
Rhetorical perspective?
the writing part of it. We're looking at cover letters from the convincing an employer perspective. But there were some interesting things that he raised, a couple words I had to look up after his presentation, that we just thought we would present to you. Maybe they'll be helpful, maybe they won't. And as a reminder, we'll be sending you these slides afterward, after the presentation. So some thoughts he raised that might be interesting to consider. So, he described a cover letter as a social action between you and an employer, which I never really thought about it quite that way before. And some of the points related to that, this action has motives. You're hoping to get an interview. There's a function. You're trying to convince the employer that you are worthy of an interview. There are goals, connecting and outlining who you are. Loved this. With some elasticity. Anything you want to add about those?
I think it shows that you have to be flexible with the way that you shape your experience to fit the job, things like that. That's sort of how I interpreted it.
And not every cover letter is going to be exactly the same. In a perfect world, where time is not an issue, sleep is not an issue, and all that, you're probably going to tweak it at least a little bit each time. Although if you're looking for similar jobs in similar organizations, it's probably going to stay fairly simple. So then the other thing that I thought this was interesting too. To remember that the letter, the action is a symbiotic relationship with your audience. So you want them, and hopefully they want you. Again, just an interesting way to think about it.
Much more of a theoretical framework to cover letters
Yes.
than very practical, I suppose. But
Yes, I like that. Yes. And then to consider the rhetorical dynamics, so maybe for our TESOL students, these are phrases that you think about more than I do, that the letter is reader-centric. So often students will write something like, and I hope to gain experience and skills from this job. No. They know you're going to gain skills and experience. Your focus needs to be on the writer and what they might need.
I think just adding on to the reader-centric thing, put yourself in the reader's shoes and think, okay, if this is full of vocabulary that I know that this person never uses, and if this is very flagrant, it's probably not what the reader enjoys reading. So write something that you would want to read yourself.
We liked this one too. Balance confidence with humility. So you want to portray that you possess whatever the skills might be, but you don't want to cross that line of bragging. And depending on your cultural background, even writing confidently about what you have to offer could feel a little awkward. And then show the reader, don't tell the reader. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the middle paragraph of the cover letter. And then I'm probably dating myself by using this particular image. This is a character from an old comedy, Seinfeld. And as I was hearing these things from Matt last week, my mind was blown about the theoretical aspects in just a different way to think about it. This character's name is Kramer. You'll have to look him up. Nobody's laughing, so clearly it's
I know
important.
who it is.
You know who it is.
Yeah.
Okay, Charles knows who it is. Okay, so as we have in many of our Wednesday workshops, I want you to be thinking for a moment about your dream job. And, you know, maybe it's a little clearer this week than it was 2 weeks ago. Maybe it's still very fuzzy, but I want you to have that in mind. And guess what we're going to use today? I want you to be thinking about what you have to offer an employer in the good old top 10 reasons to hire me. So, I figure if I introduce it or reintroduce it often enough, you'll be able to do it in your sleep. So, I'm going to give you one to work from, and if you want to keep it right on it, that's fine. And we're going to work from the side that has qualities and skills on it. Hello, that's okay. Hello, hello. Come on in. So, in the context of that dream job, from what you know at this particular moment, I want you to choose a total of 3 skills and or qualities. So it can be a mix, but choose 3 skills or qualities that you have, that you like using, and that you think would be appropriate and helpful to the job. So if you'll circle them, I'll give you a couple moments. And then when you're ready, whether it's on this space at the bottom, that probably would be easier than on the side, I'd like you to write an example of a time that you've used each skill or quality that you circled successfully, and try to think about an example that might be relevant to that dream job. And again, even if that dream job is very fuzzy right now, think of an example that might be relevant to the job or organization. If you need, feel free to write wherever, because we're going to be using these 3 skills or qualities and the examples as we move on.
There's a lot of adjectives and actions to choose from, so I know it can be a little overwhelming.
I'm not quite sure how to describe our skills. Like, should we use these action verbs to describe something we have done before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so let's say I was writing a cover letter for the job I'm currently in. So before I had the job. One of the skills I have is counseling, I think is on that list. So if I were doing this exercise, I would have circled counseling. And then as I think about, oh, okay, for that job, what would be a good example? I might write something like, I career counseled graduate students at Cornell University for 21 years and feel comfortable addressing the needs of that audience. So I have lots of other examples of counseling, but for that job, this job, that would be a better example than some of the others, if that makes sense. So I'm gonna give you maybe another 2 minutes because I want to move on to the next piece. And even if you don't have all 3 done, that's okay. Because you'll have a chance to work with them again in a few minutes. I'll give you a little warm-up of what we're going to do next. So I'm going to have you set aside your work for a few moments, and I promise there is a method to my madness. We are going to We are going to critique this cover letter together. So what I'd like you to do now is take a look at the letter. And based on the minimal amount of information you have right now, oh, sorry, hold a second, I forgot to tell you what you need to know to critique the letter. I apologize, I got ahead of myself. So this is a little formula that I created after hundreds of appointments with people saying, I hate cover letters, I don't know how to write cover letters, blah, 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 blah. I sort of distilled it into 3 questions. So, first question that you're answering in the first paragraph, the opening paragraph, is why are you writing? You're telling the employer why you're writing. And typically that's because you're applying for a job that you're excited about, that maybe a faculty member told you about the organization, or you read an article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, or you were talking to an alum at homecoming, or something like that. Typically somewhat brief, maybe 2 to 5-ish sentences.
I also think the first paragraph is a good opportunity to introduce yourself at a very high level. This is who I am, student at University of Pennsylvania, etc. Just in like 1 sentence before you go into all your skills and qualifications.
So think about, why am I writing, as you're crafting that paragraph. Then the middle paragraph, or paragraphs, some people like to do one big paragraph, some people like to do smaller paragraphs. It doesn't matter, whatever you like better. But the question you're answering in those middle paragraphs is, why are you qualified for the job? So think about some of the theoretical stuff. It needs to be focused on the employer and what you have to offer the employer related to that job. So typically, if you've done a thorough job with the top 10 reasons to hire me exercise, which obviously you haven't had a chance this morning to do that, you're going to select the top 3 to 5 reasons to hire you in priority order as they relate to the job. So in another job, it might not be as relevant that I've got career counseling with graduate students. There might be something else that's more important. And then you're going to give 1 brief, relevant example of each of the reasons to hire you. So the biggest mistakes I see in cover letter critiques are that middle paragraph. And so there's usually 2 versions of what I see. I will see a grocery list of, 10 or 12 reasons that the writer is qualified for the job. Which is nice, but no evidence. So remember the show, not tell? Telling would be, here's all the skills and qualities I have for the job. Showing is providing examples, proof, evidence that relates to the job.
So answering the question, how? Something along those lines. I think this is a really good way to think about writing for the reader as well. A reader doesn't want to read 17 sentences about how you have one skill. They want to, in a quick snapshot, understand how you can use that skill. So I think that's a good thing to include there, yeah.
The other version I'll see is maybe 1 or 2 reasons to hire the person with multiple examples of those reasons. So if you think 3 to 5 of the top ones in priority order and 1 brief relevant example of each of them. And then in the closing paragraph, you're answering the question, what next? So some typical things might be, you're repeating your enthusiasm for the job, for the organization, for the field. There's typically a standard line where you refer the reader to your resume for more details. It's kind of an obvious thing. If you didn't have it in there, it would be okay. And then the next sentence or 2 depends on the situation. So let's say there was a job you're interested in, and when you are, away from GSE at the end of November, and you're in the geographic location where the employer is, you could write, I will be in the Pittsburgh area from November this to November that, and would welcome the opportunity to meet with you in person. Sometimes that might not be appropriate. We can help you a little bit with that. Sometimes you just say nothing, and then you wrap up with some sort of thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration. I look forward to hearing from you, something like that. What else do you want to add?
I think that's pretty much it. I think in my experience with cover letters, sometimes I include additional contact information here. If you would like me to elaborate on any of these skills or qualities that I've mentioned in this letter, feel free to reach me at X, Y, and Z. That's kind of an alternative approach to the I'll be in Pittsburgh.
And with that, you can also include when. So, if Allison is in class from 9 to 12 a.m. to noon, that's not a good time to reach her. So she could even put, I'll make it up, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays from noon to 5, Tuesday, Thursdays, these times, or something like that. Questions about the formula? Okay, so now, based on your brief introduction to the formula, we are going to critique this letter together. So I want you to take maybe 2 minutes, look over the letter, and circle, underline, highlight the things that you think could be improved, aren't right with this letter. And then we're going to critique it together as a group. And I'll tell you how we're going to do that after you've read it. I can see that many of you, just based on your pen, are getting to the end of the letter. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we're going to do this. So we're going to do one at a time, and I'm hoping that each person will share something that they noticed. We're going to focus on content first, and if somebody takes or says what you were going to say, you got to say something else. So you might want to be the one who goes early before everybody takes all the things you were going to say. And there's probably no rights and wrongs. Different people are going to have different points of view, and that's okay. There's some general guidelines that we'll all agree on, hopefully. and then I'll show you my thoughts about the letter. So, who would like to point out the first content-oriented piece of feedback? Yes.
So I think in the first paragraph, the person doesn't mention her name, and I also feel like she should put the school she graduated from at the very beginning of the paragraph rather than talking about her interest.
Okay, so I'm gonna split those in two, and I'm gonna deal with the second one first. So what your recommendation is that Beth would move this information about graduating from Penn with a master's in intercultural communication earlier in the paragraph to catch the reader's eye. Now, one thing I've learned from my colleague, we were talking about this the other day, depending on the cultural context that you've learned to write letters, there might be some differences in what you usually do and what I'm going to suggest that you do. Typically, you don't write your name in the opening paragraph because it's right here. So if the person wants to know your name, they're going to look down here. So it's sort of repetitive. If she wrote in the opening, "Dear Ms. Doe, my name is Beth Bradley, and I will graduate this May from the University of Pennsylvania," that's a little redundant. So you could use that space instead to, convince Beth you're a great person for the job. So I would have, if we were critiquing your letter in my office, I would have crossed that out. Another content piece, yes.
I would like to mention about the first sentence in the first paragraph.
Okay.
So I think it's not enough or it's not finished idea. So he said that he's interested, or she, I'm not sure. So
That's okay.
Interested to read the article in this, if I'm not mistaken, this is a magazine.
Uh-huh.
And growing international student population at the university. I think she could have added, touched her or what moved her, why she was interested, so the reason why she was interested. So just saying I'm interested, I think it's like very broad.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So give us specific. I was really interested in
This and that.
the growing number of refugees from Syria that you're finding on campus and what phase? Yeah. Great. Good. Okay, another content one.
Going back to being reader-centric,
Yes.
if I'm Jane Doe,
Yes.
I don't understand why UT Austin would necessarily be the best fit for her. She doesn't really mention the position that she's applying for or how those skills connect to it.
Great. Yeah. So other than moving to Austin and being interested in the article, she's not really saying why UT Austin in particular. Great, good catch. Yes, Latrice.
So she also mentions any positions that may be available, which to Jane Doe may seem like, okay, you didn't do your homework because maybe they're posted on the website or things of that nature.
And it comes across, and again, we don't know how the reader's going to take this, but you're desperate. You're moving to Austin and you need a job.
I'll take anything.
I'll take anything. Which may be where Beth is at right now, but if I were critiquing her letter, I would say, okay, girl, you need to be a little more specific. Be reader-centric. Think about what they need. Great. Yes.
Yeah, for the middle paragraph, she mentioned a lot of her experience, like at school, to for work for the international student, but she didn't list the top reasons to hire her. Just gave the evidence, but didn't give employer the reason to hire me.
So almost like you have to make an assumption. You got to jump from, well, actually in reverse, from the example to, what's she trying to show me here?
Yeah.
Great. Good. Yes.
Another point for the middle paragraph, I think she used a lot of language like enhance my understanding or increase my knowledge. I think it's not very reader-centric because if I'm the reader, I don't care what you have learned or
Yes, Beth isn't here, so we can be frank. Straightforward. Right. Show me, as the employer, how that knowledge or how that skill is going to help me serve the international students at UT Austin. Yes, excellent. Yes.
I'd like to mention in the last paragraph, she says, I'll call you the first week of May. But actually, maybe Jane doesn't have time. And it sounds a little rude to call something.
So what's interesting is, yeah, if you notice, okay, so she's writing this letter on April 26th. We don't know if she's sending it by email. We don't know if she's sending it by USA mail, whatever. And she's saying here, I'm going to call you the first week. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31. So, do you guys know that one? That's how in US we learn how to remember how many days of the month there are. Anyway, except for February, which has 28 or 29. Well, that's only a few days away. So depending on when the letter arrives, yeah, that's a little short notice and possibly a little presumptuous.
And a little bit unprofessional in the sense that it's like, oh, I'll call you in May, you know what I mean? Instead of, let's work together to find a mutually beneficial time.
And personal interview, that also struck me a little odd. So, you know, it might be, if she was insistent on being assertive, maybe to write, I'll call you in mid-May to see if we might be able to arrange a time to talk. So a little more, hey, it's up to you. I just want you to know I am going to follow up. Okay, what else? Yes?
Also in the last paragraph, I think the writer could make some summary of the skills of her or what the job she wants, because I think after the second paragraph it's a bit chaotic. Maybe the readers will be already forgot what skills she has.
Yeah. So part of this closing paragraph, the what next, you know, thank you for taking the time to review my resume. In summary, here's my top skills or qualities or whatnot. Yeah. So do you guys know the formula? Tell me what you're going to tell me. Tell it to me, and then tell me what you told me. It's kind of an outline for an argument, if you will. Great. What else? Yes.
I wonder whether the second paragraph there were too many details.
Can you give us an example?
For example, I think the first experience she used like more than 3 sentences to describe, and I found it's a little bit too detailed. Maybe she can brief it.
Yes. So she's saying one of the reasons to hire her is her experience, we'll say, at the International House. So then she tells us about 40 students, individual counseling, personal, cultural, and immigration issues, organizing professional and social programs, interpersonal skills, organizational skills, and I've been successful. Yeah, so she talks about this experience and gives us, I lost count, 5 or 6 or 7 of the skills or qualities.
Yeah.
So she could reuse the experience, or she could use it again as an example, but one skill or quality at a time. Good. What else? Who else hasn't shared content? Yes, ma'am.
For the last paragraph, like he write, thank you for the time, taking the time to review my resume. Maybe like he can add some sentences to repeat the enthusiasm he has for the job.
Yes. Yeah. So not unlike, or a little different, but good for this final paragraph. Here's a summary of why I'm qualified, and also I am really excited about this opportunity. In whatever wording would be natural to that person. Yes, those are both good things to have in that final paragraph. Who else didn't give a content? Did it? Yes.
I'm still stuck with the first sentence.
Yes.
So I just wonder if this article was, let's say, this Miss Stories article, and is it okay if we refer to the authors, to employers like experience or words? So here she's written like Austin Times article about your university, but it's not her article, right? It's
It's just a article.
Right,
It's
and
just an
Jane
article.
Doe isn't the writer.
Yes.
Yeah. So being more specific about maybe the author, the number of the
I
publication.
mean, can we write, for example, if she was the writer, that can we include in our cover letters that I was inspired by your
Oh,
article and
absolutely, definitely. And the way maybe, let's pretend Jane didn't write it, maybe Beth would add, I was interested to read the article by your colleague, John Smith, about such and such in the Austin Times, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that would be very appropriate.
And I think for a lot of positions at universities and then more academic positions, someone's work could be a really big driver for why you want to work there. Let's say you're going to a research position and the director of the program has done something phenomenal. Totally fine to mention that because that's a big reason, you know?
It's an example of your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
You know the work of the person. Any structural format things that you're thinking, that looks a little weird, or? Yes, Renee.
I would say break the middle paragraph to 2 or 3 maybe.
Okay, so for your preferences, you would break this down into 3.
2 maybe. And
Well,
cut some examples.
let's assume for a moment that she's giving us 3 reasons to hire her. Maybe it would be 3 small paragraphs or something like that. Yeah, and that's a personal preference. You can either have one big bad paragraph, or you could break it down into smaller paragraphs. In my letter, I break it down into smaller paragraphs because I think it's easier to read for me. Any other format sorts of things that you're wondering about? We were both delighted when Matthew Osborne from the Writing Center emphasized following format guidelines. It felt a little geeky to admit that, but I'm going to show you some of those. So these are some of my points. They're not all of them. They're not the necessarily absolutely the final word, but some things I would have pointed out if I was critiquing Beth's letter. So let's see if this animation works. So one thing I would notice in the first paragraph, it might not be the first thing I would comment on, but possibly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 times that she wrote I. So there are some strategies you can use to write I less. So yes, she's telling us why she's writing, but she could restructure the sentences of the paragraphs or something like that. Okay, what did I notice next? Oh, I know what I did too. So the red are things that are not good. The green are things that are good. So a good thing in the paragraph, although not necessarily who said the order of it, is that she mentions in the opening paragraph she's a student at the University of Pennsylvania and will be getting a master's degree in intercultural communications in May. So that's an attention grabber. Wow, you're graduating from Penn and this is your program. So that's a good thing to have in the opening paragraph. What else did I do? Okay, so she did specify interpersonal and organizational skills. So there's 2 of the reasons to hire her. Another reason to hire her is her understanding of international student issues and concerns. Another reason to hire her is her knowledge of international cultures, customs, and communication styles. So 4 reasons to hire her. Okay, let me go back. But similar to, no, I can't remember who said, yeah, she gives us all these reasons to hire her, but she doesn't necessarily give specific examples for each one of them. Another I in the closing paragraph. Oh, this drives me crazy. The last sentence in the second paragraph, these experiences have formed an excellent foundation on which to build my student advising career. And I would be most interested in continuing my career at University of Texas. That is not reader-centric. That is writer-centric. So if she changed it to, and I'd be most interested in offering these skills to the international students at University of Texas at Austin, that would be better. And by the way, we are gonna send the PowerPoint slides, so, what else did I do? Format. So, nowadays, this address, which would be your address, comes over to the left. So they're all left justified. When I was in school and we worked with typewriters, not word processing, another style was you could have your address here, but then the signature would line up over here. Nowadays, it's all left justified with a space between the paragraphs. In the old days, we indented each paragraph, a tab, and then there was no space in between. So this is the standard style now. Is something else wrong?
I can see it. Oh, you're pressing the pointer.
Oh, that's why. Just seeing if you're paying attention. So Beth it's a little awkward to have her phone number under her name. If she wanted to refer to it, like Allison mentioned, in this closing paragraph, I can be reached by phone at, during these times, that would be a better place to put it, and or it's on her resume. So that's an awkward place, and it could be just on her resume. Okay, let me go back a second. The other thing that's a nice touch nowadays, and Matthew mentioned this and I like this too, to insert your signature. So, if you have access to a photocopier that scans, take a white piece of paper and a black thin Sharpie, write your signature several times, scan it, and then choose the signature that you think is the best, and then make it a JPEG and insert it right here. Classy little touch, attention to detail. You'll notice I've done it on my email if you get any emails from me, which I know you do. Anything else you want to point out about the letter that you noticed, or Renee that you noticed from your experience with this?
I agreed with a lot of the things that everyone said. I don't think that she talked about the job enough. I don't think that she really split up these experiences very clearly. I kind of got lost in her middle paragraph. And then in the end, she kind of was taking control of the situation instead of understanding that the next steps were kind of up to the employer. So I think everyone kind of mentioned those things. But
yeah. Excellent. Okay, so how are we doing? We're doing okay. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take the 3 skills and or qualities and the examples of when you've used them successfully, and now I want you to use those to write your middle paragraph for your dream job. So, you may not know what the dream job is, or maybe you do, or somewhere in between, but from your best guess at the moment, I want you to take the 3 skills or qualities and turn them into your middle paragraph. And please, do a better job than Beth did. Okay? I'm gonna give you maybe 5 minutes to do that, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Just a draft. And then I'll tell you what we're gonna do next. So as you're finishing up for now, I want to refer you to a book and a chapter. I don't remember the chapter number. So the author Anne Lamott wrote a book called Bird by Bird, and the chapter Shitty First Drafts was a required reading in my program at Penn. And I think of this often, and as you were writing and you had looks of horror on your face, I thought of this chapter. So the concept in the chapter is basically just write. And even if there's only one line or a small paragraph or a word choice that's good, that's still helpful. Keep that stuff, get rid of the rest, and then write again. So the concept that, yeah, you're probably not going to get it right, no pun intended, the first time. It's going to take a few not so good tries, and then you'll get there. So, now, here's what we're going to do. You are going to critique each other's middle paragraphs, and I'm going to modify this a little bit. So I want you to be with somebody in a program that's different than yours. So I'm going to try to make the pairing as easy physically as possible. UTR, what's your program? Okay, so you two can be together. Ed policy, you two can be together. You two can't be together. What's yours?
LST.
You can be with her. What's yours?
TESOL.
TESOL. Easy. What's yours?
LSD.
We're gonna have to have two TESOLs together. So how about, why don't you two work together?
Sure.
And then you two work together, and then you two get to work together.
And I have to move with her.
Oh, you have to work with her.
And
Wait a
then she
minute.
can work with,
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
there you go.
I was like, wait a minute, I thought there were even numbers. Okay, so go to your, turn to your partner, go to your partner, whatever. And one thing I didn't have you do was pull up a job description. So take turns, introduce yourself to your partner, tell them a little bit about what you know for now. It might be your ideal job. And then let them read your middle paragraph in whatever state it might be, and give you feedback. All right, and then when you're done, switch roles. And the second person will say, well, here's the job I'm thinking about, here's my middle paragraph. And then they'll critique it. And I want you to do this in English. And do you know, for those of you that have been here, do you know why I want you to do it in English?
Because when we write cover letter, it will happen in English.
Yes! And so if you're applying for a job in the US, you're gonna have to write your letter in US or in English, so I want you to get more comfortable if English is not your native language in writing and speaking in English. Okay, go.
Okay.
Okay, so, because we still have some great stuff we want to share with you, from the perspective of being the writer, not being the critiquer, what was that experience like? How was that for you? Oh, come on, you were all just talking a moment ago. Horrible, helpful, insightful, interesting, a waste of time.
It was helpful.
Helpful how?
So for example, in our case, for example, I didn't see the order in my paragraph, so he mentioned like you should first go with this one and then apply this one. So he can another person can see some things that you don't notice. Just
Excellent, yeah. So thinking about that priority order, and I didn't mention earlier, but Matthew from the Writing Center said initially the reader is probably going to spend 30 to 60 seconds on the first scan. So by putting the most important stuff at the beginning of that middle paragraph, they're more likely to see it and be intrigued to read further. Great, good. What else was helpful or interesting or? Yes.
Yeah, I think reading others' cover letters is very helpful because she has a very well organized. For example, in her first sentence, she included 3 skills she have in one sentence, and it is very reader friendly.
So it was helpful to be the critiquer because you got to see other examples. Great. How How about one other thought, and then we'll have Allison bring us home. I was reading something recently about how U.S. people communicate, and that one of the things Americans often do is use sports references in their speaking. So I've become aware of, like, oh yeah, bring us home. That's a baseball reference that you're gonna bat so that the person on third base can get to home and get a run. Anyway, one other thought? Okay, fine. We'll have Allison finish things up for us.
Awesome. So as you start to write your cover letters and think about applying to jobs, there are a lot of resources here at Penn that you can take advantage of to help. I heard a couple of questions about how do I reduce I in my cover letter, or how do I clean up this sentence or tighten up that structure. Weingarten Learning Resources Center and the Marks Family Writing Center are really good places to turn to, and I'll be sending these slides just to help with the way that you are writing. Not necessarily that professional connection, but in terms of content and clarity and structure. On the career side, you can schedule an appointment with either of us, GSE Career and Professional Development, or Penn Career Services, to kind of make that connection to how does this convey how I'm going to be valuable to the job, and ask for our opinion on your cover letters. We also have drop-in hours that are starting next week with our career fair advisors, which are here. And you can stop by for 15 minutes, get someone to look over your cover letter or your resume for you, and get a little bit of quick feedback. And you don't have to schedule an appointment for these. So let's say you're in the student lounge on Wednesday and you just want to get some really speedy tips. You can, which is exciting.
And two things, this time is wrong. It's 2 to 3. And then are these asterisks when Mandarin's available?
Yes.
Okay.
And on Monday from 2 to 4, Tuesday from 4 to 6, Thursday from 3 to 5, and Friday from 2 to 4, you can get a critique or a review in Mandarin Chinese. Although we do advise that you do these sorts of things in English if you would feel a lot more comfortable that those are available.
Sometimes it's a little easier to talk about subjects that aren't as familiar in your native language. So since we have some other language skills available among our group, we wanted to make that known.
Yes. And then just two other resources that I wanted to walk through. All of you have access to a platform called Vault as Penn students. And Vault has a ton of resources for how do I write my resume, or how do I write my cover letter, or going for a job interview next week, what should I think about? So this particular page, and the link is down here, again, I'll be sending these, has tips on how to get started with your cover letter and a couple of examples and sample cover letters that you can look to for inspiration when you start writing yours. This is really great. The next one is on Penn Career Services website, and again, the link is at the bottom. This talks a little bit about the etiquette that you should think about, talks about being reader-centric, and again, there are a lot of examples that you can turn to, and it's just very clearly laid out about how you should approach the cover letter writing process. So I definitely urge you all to check this out.
That also made me think about going global.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are applying for a job in a country where you're not from it, that wasn't very good grammar, the Writing Center would be all over that. Going Global is a resource much like Vault that you have access to through Penn Career Services, and you can actually get information on, you know, I want to find a job in Luxembourg. One of our students was looking for a job in Luxembourg. You can go to Going Global and get information about, okay, if you're applying for a job in Luxembourg, here's what you include in your resume. Here's what you put in your cover letter. Here's how you do outreach, or not, for example. So that's another resource you might want to know.
And again, here are drop-in hours. You'll be getting an email about them. Any questions?
I hope at the very least that the formula helps simplify it some for you. Why are you writing? Why are you qualified? What next? At the very least, if you don't remember anything else. Well, and I bet you'll remember this. First draft. All right, well, thank you for coming. Everybody make sure that you signed in so we can send you the PowerPoint slides. Take a snack for the road if you like.